So, obviously there's this trend kind of going around where people are asking, what would you like to leave um, behind in the new year? So, for instance, what are you looking to leave behind in 2024? And what are you looking to embrace in 2025? And one thing that I saw come up a lot was gender wars, the term gender wars. So, when we think about gender wars, that's kind of like a relatively new term or terminology to basically make a statement in regards to men and women kind of being pinned against one another, and not necessarily seeing the value that each other brings within our world, like in our society. And we see this a lot in a lot of social media more than anything, I would say, is the quote unquote gender wars. But it made me kind of do a little bit more of a deep dive. Like when we think about the genders, one thing I would definitely say, media is very good at exacerbating everything. So when in actuality there was some sense of divide or some sense of roles, gender roles that has been embedded in our society, but it wasn't as public. It was just kind of like what we did, But like now, especially with the age of social media, that's being highlighted a lot more. And so when we think about gender wars in that sense, we're seeing this divide of people feeling like they can coexist in a sense, right? And so many people are kind of at a standstill, and they're like, you know what, men, you all stay over there, and women stay over here. But from a biological standpoint, we know that if that continues in our world, really, what's going to happen if we have this consistent divide? And then I can get on a soapbox about maybe why this is premeditated in the first place. But I just want to talk about these gender wars, so to speak, and how it affects like our connections with one another and our intimacy. And so I thought that was really important. So I just wanted to kind of dive into that today. So just kind of be thinking about, even just for yourself, like, do you feel that you're seeing more so of this gender war, going on? Do you think that this is something that's just made up? It's not really true. What are your thoughts about that? So one thing I'll definitely just kind of start off with is what I see a lot of times when it comes to these gender wars is this sense of a loss of like trust and emotional safety between men and women. And when you think about the frustrations that people are experiencing in their relationships, it tends to lead to like a defensiveness. We're blaming each other. We're lacking empathy. So for example, like one partner may feel dismissed or invalidated, like when they're expressing their issues or their struggles, when it comes to their masculinity or femininity. And that can also cause a divide, because if you feel that you cannot even empathize with your partner, which that's what's happening a lot of times due to these gender wars, people are not even, they're not even expressing empathy towards each other. They're just kind of like, okay, well, that's your problem. I care less to hear about it. And where does that derive from? Why are we like that? That's very concerning. And so when people feel emotionally safe, both men and women, right? This isn't just a woman thing, but when a person feels emotionally safe, they can share their vulnerabilities without feeling like they're going to be attacked or that it's going to be utilized later on for someone to have like one up them, And so it's really important that we're creating these spaces where people can talk very freely about how they feel. Now, again, it doesn't mean that when they're talking about how they feel that that's law or that's all 100% truth. It's just how they feel in the moment. So when someone is expressing to you of a different gender, what they feel like they're experiencing, what's going on with them, even if you don't agree with it, try to connect them, meet them where they are. Tell me a little bit about why you feel that way. What were some of your experiences? Talk to me about that. Then that other person can feel like, oh, okay, so you actually have an interest in what I've gone through, instead of just responding to what I'm saying in a way that shows that you don't care and that what I'm saying is invalid because you've never seen that before. And so it's really important that if you haven't experienced something of the other gender, or you don't understand something, or you just feel like it's just flat out wrong, still try to allow that person to be able to speak whatever is going on in their lives and see how you can connect with them. This doesn't even have to be in a romantic relationship. It could be in a platonic relationship. You know, people that you're friends with or that you work with, people that you just know. You know, create safe spaces, you know, for each other. And I think that will help with some of that divide that we're seeing just from an emotional standpoint, you know. Another thing is like the power struggles. Like there's this constant power struggle that's going on between men and women. And it's like, you know, who's supposed to lead this? Who's supposed to sacrifice this? The division of labor, the decision making, the finances. He has to pay 100%. I am not supposed to do this, or she's supposed to do all of the cooking and the cleaning and what have you. It's all these imbalances when we really should be thinking about what's the best thing for the relationship. That's it. I'm not thinking about the role per se. I'm just thinking about who has the skill set to be able to lead in certain areas. Who has the skill set to be able to manage the finances a certain way? Who has the skill set to manage the household or to make sure that daily chores and different things like that are taken care of? Like, who is the best person for the job? That's how I look at that one. You know, not necessarily like, oh, because you are a woman, you should do this. Because you are a man, you should do this. Who is the best person for the job? And whoever you all agree upon who the best person is for the job, that's who we're going to focus on. And the other person is going to support that. That's it. You know, a lot of times too, when we have these divides or these gender wars, it challenges our overall sexual intimacy because we're feeling like we're supposed to show up in a certain way. So for instance, men may feel this pressure to, like, I need to show up, you know, very dominant, masculine, you know, in the bedroom, when in actuality, you know, I may like to be a little bit more submissive. I like to cuddle, I like to hold, or different things like that. Why not? If that's how he feels and he feels like he connects in that way, it's making sure that you align with someone who's kind of like the yin to your yang. So if you're more of the submissive one and then they're more of the dominant one, then it could work. Or you both are cool with taking on those roles sometimes. That could also work. So it's, again, it's not necessarily feeling like, oh, I have to be this way. Now, sometimes we have preferences. We may want things a certain way for whatever reason. Those are our experiences, or that's just what we prefer. But you can't force anybody to be in this certain, you know, sexual space that's just not in them. And so a lot of times that divide happens because of that too, because we have these expectations that people are supposed to show up this way in the bedroom sexually. And that's unfair. And what it leads to is a lot of sexual dissatisfaction, or maybe some performance anxiety, or just avoiding physical intimacy altogether. And that can also create that divide too between, you know, the genders. So what tends to happen with all of these things is that eventually there's like an emotional burnout and just a role fatigue. Like, we just don't even want to try anymore. And now we're bickering and arguing back and forth, and we're not getting anywhere because we're still stuck on these ideas that people are supposed to be this way, and this is it. That's how it's always supposed to be. When we need to have more of a balance in our relationships with each other and be able to lean on each other and to support one another no matter what's going on. Again, who's the best person for the job at that time? Who can carry out this task or this role at this time because of where they are in their life? You know, so when we think about a couple, if you have one person who works part-time or they stay at home, but you have another person that works 40 plus hours a week. I mean, from a logical perspective, the person who works part-time or is not working outside the home. Let me make that clear. They're not working outside the home, nor are they really working per se like at home type of job, you know, but they are carrying the role of managing the household, which is true work, real work. They may be the best person for the job of doing the cooking and the cleaning because they are in the home the majority of the time. and they're not bombarded with a specific working from home type of job. And so we have that. Now, when we have both people working outside the home, then that may be a different discussion about, again, who's still more skillful and who can manage certain tasks a little bit better. It doesn't mean that you like it. And just because you have a skill set and you're very good at it, it doesn't necessarily mean you like it, but for the benefit of the relationship, it may make more sense for you to do it. And then it may make more sense for your partner to do other things because of the skill set and what they can provide, to the relationship. So again, no need to argue back and forth. It's more so about what's going to benefit the relationship as a whole. And like I said before, like a lot of this increased empathy gaps is really sad that we're not taking the time to really understand people's experiences and respond according to that. Not just like these blanket statements or, all men are this way, all women are this way. Let's look at each individual, where they are on their level, and let's meet them there. That's a good starting point for kind of getting over some of these gender wars, if you will. So again, a lot of this, that can help us is just some open communication, dialogue. Let's get educated about each other, not just individually, but from a biological perspective, who we are as men and women. Let's start really reading, not just taking on a lot of these social media content creators and commentators and taking it as if that's Bible. Let's really dig in and do some research, talk to people, interview people. Again, read books, not just Google articles. There are plenty of libraries that are still open. It would be really helpful for you to read a little bit more history about what's happened with men and women over the course of many decades, just to get a better understanding of how we ended up here. What's our history? That would be really important too. Let's start doing more collaboration together, as opposed to you do that and that's your job and I do that and this is my job. How can we fuse the two? How can we make sure, again, that we're trying to benefit the relationship as a whole, as opposed to, okay, well, that's on you, I don't have nothing to do with that. Say for instance, you have a partner who is working full time and they've always handled the bills and different things like that. But say for instance something comes up where hours were cut at their job, they got laid off, they got sick, anything could have happened. How can you collaborate with them? How can you support them through that process, and not just look at them as if, because now you aren't capable of keeping this job or what have you, then I can't help you. It's about sharing the load together. Let's talk about a lot of this, cultural conditioning that we have adapted or adopted in our society. Like, we're not even willing to challenge these things anymore. We just hear things and we're like, okay, well, that's what it is. Why are we not digging deeper? That would also help, with the gender wars as well, and encouraging vulnerability. But the only way that we can encourage it is we too have to be vulnerable, and we have to allow spaces for other people to be vulnerable as well. We just have to. People do not feel safe if they can't speak what's been going on in their lives and not feel like they're going to constantly be judged or ridiculed or attacked for it. So we have to really open that space up for vulnerability. What are your thoughts, you all, on like the gender wars, or that you feel like is being presented in society today? What are your thoughts on how we got here? What do you think might help, us to kind of heal this area, in our world today? Because it's not really helping if we're not coming together and working towards a common goal. So I'm really interested to hear your thoughts on that.